You are about to witness history in the making.
What's up, everybody? It's our special edition today. We're looking at Star Wars, which has been voted by you, our listeners. My name's Hayden. I'm your host, together with my joint host, Steve. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much.
So, first off, what I would just like to say is apologies that we've been a little bit erratic in terms of the timescales for some of our shows. The main problem that we had was I've had irisitis and I couldn't actually see the screen properly in order to edit the show. So that's been what the delay is, but now we've got the shows hopefully back on track. So this week we've said we're going to talk about Star Wars. That's what you voted for. I think we had Star Trek Discovery as one of the other options, and the other one was Doctor Who. And Star Wars came out on top, as I would have thought it would normally have done when it's compared to Star Trek or Doctor Who, but not always with Star Trek. Not always with Star Trek. Don't forget I'm a Trekkie and a Star Wars fan as well. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the films in, chronological order of release date. And we're just going to give our general views about the films, any little anecdotes that we might have, that kind of thing. And then obviously probably get into more of a debate. I know that, Steve, you haven't seen some of the prequels quite as much, have you, as the other ones?
I have. I mean, I haven't watched them for a long time. I think I remember the third one more than the first two.
Yeah.
But, it's just been a while. And after watching the last one, I'm a bit of a despondent fan on Star Wars at the moment.
Well, let's hope that the new Solo movie will rekindle our faith in all things Star Wars, and I've heard that it's getting quite good reviews with the critics. So fingers crossed we might have another good Star Wars. Anyway, without further ado, we'll talk about A New Hope, or as it was originally released, Star Wars.
Yes, because The New Hope, that was after about the third iteration of it came out, they decided to throw that in there.
Yeah, it was one of those, I mean, it was always episode 4. But I think that A New Hope was added in later on. And when we actually come to talk about Rogue One, I think that the last line in Rogue One was very fitting for, I know it's contrived the opposite way around, but it kind of makes it a nice circle. But we'll come on to Rogue One later on. So, A New Hope. So when did you first see it, Steve?
New Hope would have been probably 1977 when it came out.
Yeah.
I was probably a wee lad at the time.
Yeah, well, I was in primary school at the time.
Yeah, so what would I have been? I would have been about 11, 12 at the time.
Yeah, I was 6 back then.
And before I saw the film, I actually went to the National History Museum in London.
Yeah.
And saw a Star Wars exhibition.
Really? So you actually saw about the film before you saw the film?
Yeah. I did, yeah. There's some clips of the film there with bits and pieces, because they're like, you saw, like, there was a whole C-3PO there and an R2-D2 and all some bits and pieces from the movie. So it was a nice way to go into the film, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit my experience about Star Wars was pre-seeing the film as well, because I had a friend at school, his name was Tim, he went to America and saw it before it came out here, because back in the 70s, if you remember, the films used to get released about 6 months later over at this, in England, didn't they?
I think was it a Christmas release in the States and a summer in the UK?
I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember at all, to be quite honest with you.
What I also did, actually, is I actually bought the comics.
I used to get the comics as well every week. Star Wars Weekly.
which built the story up in chapters.
Yes, they did.
And they were very... I can't remember who they were done by. Whether it was it DC at the time, maybe? Something like that? I can't remember.
I can't remember, to be honest. It was years ago.
But then we didn't have all this merchandising we've got today.
But Star Wars was the first thing that went onto the merchandising train.
It wasn't. So having the comics, being to see a sort of seeing the stuff that was in the film as well, which is pretty cool. I wasn't that fussed about Star Wars like yourself, so you would have had the figures and everything else.
Oh, I did.
I just had the soundtrack at the time.
Yeah.
Which I don't actually own anymore, that soundtrack. But I am looking at buying the box set of all of them at some point. But yeah, no, it was definitely something new, and I don't think anyone realised what they were grabbing hold of there as a start of a franchise.
No, I don't, because it's probably one of the most, if not the most, successful film franchise of all time. Even more so than Bond, which preceded it by over a decade. I think Star Wars has earned more than the Bond movies combined, hasn't it?
Possibly, yeah. I've got the figures in front of me.
No,
but I'm sure
I haven't, but I'm sure I read somewhere once that it had. I mean, first experience I had of Star Wars was, they said my friend went to America and saw it because it was on 6 months before. Before it was here, and I got to know a lot about the film before I actually went to see it, because obviously we got the comics about the same time, because there wasn't that delay on the comics that there was on the films for some really strange reason. And then after that, the figures started appearing in the stores, the old Palatoy figures. Yeah. And I remember not knowing anything about Star Wars, other than the characters' names and the brief bits I'd read in the comics. Yeah. Immediately bonded with Han Solo as a character. And that, I've had that sort of like bromance thing about Han Solo for years since, do you know what I mean? It's always been like a character who, everybody wanted to be Han Solo, but it was only the daft nerdy kids who wanted to be Luke. Do you know what I mean? But, so the first Star Wars figure I ever got was a Star Wars character, and I ended up collecting all of them. Certainly for the first 2 movies, I had every Star Wars character. Yeah. Must have cost my parents a fortune, to be honest. But I had so many Star Wars toys, but we talked about that in our toy debate, didn't we? Yeah. Yes, obviously my Amazon Echo can't remember that, but that was definitely...
Funny enough, I'm just looking up, actually, because it was Marvel that produced the Star Wars comics in 1977.
That kind of makes sense, considering that Marvel now is aligned with Disney as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, Star Wars, it was a groundbreaking film, I think. I think that the one that had been the most groundbreaking before that was 2001. And then Star Wars took that 2001 sort of realistic, special effects and took it to the next level.
Yeah, of course.
And it's fascinating. Have you ever watched any of the documentaries that are on like the discs that you can get with Star Wars?
Oh yeah, I've seen all the documentaries that came out with all the bits and bobs that I've watched over. Because how would I put this? I think, to be honest, Star Wars is my most bought movies, I think, due to the different iterations we've got. Yeah. From the VHS cassette. Yeah. To DVD. To DVD, widescreen, box set, Blu-ray, everything else.
Every time there's a new version, you buy it.
Do you know what? Do you want to carry on chatting? Will I just go and get this pizza out the door?
Okay, I'll carry on chatting. So, for me, Star Wars has always been something very close to my heart. It was one of the things that got me into sci-fi, just like Star Trek did as well. Star Wars filled a little bit of a different itch, whereas Star Trek is more of a utopian sort of view of the future. Star Wars is, in some ways, a bit more of a gritty universe, I think. There's a lot more different things that go on in that universe, such as, the fact that you've got the Jedi, you've got the Force, you've got this evil intergalactic empire that has just suddenly sprouted up out of, seemingly nowhere, because we don't know all of the storylines at that point. And I remember looking at a lot of things, such as who Darth Vader was and who Anakin Skywalker was. And there used to be, on the Star Wars toys, the little explanations about who the characters were as well. So, you could, it would say on the back of your...
Sorry about that. Nobody else is looking at the bleeding doors.
Okay.
Oh, Right, sorry about that. Right. What have I missed?
I was just filling in time while you came back, Steve. just talking a bit about some of my views about it, but I was just saying in terms of some of the Star Wars toys, what they used to have on the back was like little explanations of some of the characters. So, for example, I knew that Darth Vader had, been beaten by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and effectively chucked into a volcano, 2.5 decades before The Phantom Menace came out.
Right.
Because all of that was all explained on the back of everything. And this is one of the things I think is great about Star Wars, how it has been up until Disney took over, which is it's always had a coherent universe, because anything that got released with the Star Wars branding had to be approved by George Lucas to fit in the universe somewhere.
Did you? I know by the time it came out over here, now in the States when the toys came out, they had to have like a card, like they got a cardboard cutout saying they're coming soon. Yeah, because it was trying to get them for Christmas. But by the time the UK got hold of it, we didn't have that problem, did we?
No, we didn't have that problem. Well, I wasn't aware of it by then. But bearing in mind, I was only 6.
Yeah, because obviously, and listening to the documentaries and hearing about how they wanted to bring it out before Christmas, but they just couldn't do it. So they had the cardboard gift set, which would be coming soon. And it went from there, really. Yeah. So, but it was a great film. I think, there's not a lot to it, really, if you break it down. No, and to be honest, you can tell it's very much that sort of modern mythology brought up to date, can't you, really? Because it's got the wizard, in the form of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's got the apprentice following the wizard in the form of Luke. It's got the pirate, who's a good guy at heart as in Han, and Chewie is, the love interest's Leia. It's funny because with the toys as well, didn't they bring out, and I saw this recently, as I just chuckled to myself, because I think it's been thrown on Facebook, that they had his the parents that looks after him, they had a burnt version of them. So obviously when the the stormtroopers came over, he was away at the time. Yeah, and he burnt his uncle's place. They brought out 2 burnt versions. Burnt uncle in Aunt Peru. Yeah. Yeah. It's very sick, but Yeah, there's all sorts of weird stuff, isn't there? I'm sure that actually might be real, to be quite honest. No, that's what I'm saying. I think it was real. Yeah, I do as well. I don't think it was April Fool's joke, because I'm sure I've actually seen one, or at least something that someone's mocked up. Yeah, and I think for this film, I think it was the first time people made note of continuity mistakes. Yeah. Because I think when we had Star Wars first on the TV back in the day, and we would have had a TV show that was for continuity mistakes. Do you remember that show? Yes, I do. I can't remember what it's called. Was it Be Alright on a Night or something? Something like that, maybe. Yeah. And then you had the stormtrooper that banged his head when he come through the doors. But what I love is that it shows that George Lucas has a good sense of humour, because in the special editions later on, he dubbed in someone going, "Ow," when he bumped his head. Yeah, but he kept him in, which is pretty good. And I think I always used to love looking at the continuity mistakes and little things like that were sitting around in all those movies, to be honest. Not necessarily the newer ones, but the original 3. Yeah, I mean, you've got to really wonder about, in terms of the person in charge of continuity control. Should have been sacked. You have one job. Yeah, exactly. But and of course, there was such a great cast in the original, because you had Sir Alec Guinness, who evidently thought it was the biggest load of tripe he'd ever been associated with, but evidently I think that he was well compensated by his 2% of the gross profit. Yeah. There was... I mean, the rest... you had Peter Cushing. I was about to say Peter Cushing. My brain just went... I know, that's why I thought I'd bump it in there. Yeah. As Governor Tarkin. Exactly, as Governor Tarkin. And he was brilliant in anything that he was in. And having complete unknowns. Yeah, because Mark Hamill, he was an unknown. Yeah. And when you think Harrison Ford, I mean, how big was Harrison Ford through the 80s, the 90s and the 90s? He's one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. And he was, he was a carpenter. and he was just a stand-in at one point for the tests.
Yeah, but he had done, I forgot what it was called, for George Lucas beforehand, American Graffiti.
Briefly, he was in
he was briefly in that, but that was the only real acting credit I think that he'd had at that time.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna put my mortgage on it now, but I think Apocalypse Now was before Star Wars or after?
I can't remember, to be quite honest.
Because he had a bit part in that, for example, which probably no one would even know he was in it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you had all these unknowns that would work well together,
and it did have really good chemistry. I mean, when you looked at Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. They were, the perfect trio, weren't they, really?
But if it could have been so different.
Yeah, and I mean, the amazing thing is Anthony Daniels and Kenny Baker hated each other.
Well, don't you get that with some of these movies, that people just don't get on? They're there to do a job. Yeah, because
evidently Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman don't get on.
You wouldn't think that, would you?
No, you wouldn't, because they're such good actors. Yeah. But... yeah, because for those of you who don't know, Kenny Baker was R2-D2, the man in the tin can, and Anthony Daniels, C-3PO. Human-cyborg relations. Yeah,
and it could have been no different. We could have had Kurt Russell playing in this film.
Yeah, or Christopher Walken as Han Solo as well.
Yeah.
And it's, at one point, evidently Han Solo was supposed to be green with gills. Did you know that?
And do you think how bad this movie could have failed?
When you actually hear about some of the early design choices that they were doing, it really would have been a bad B movie, but they changed it around much, much for the better.
Yeah. Do you want to... Should we move on?
So the next film, obviously, is The Empire Strikes Back. And this is the one that, personally, I think is the best movie out of all of the movies, because it has that edge of darkness to it, and it doesn't have all of that hope that the other movies kind of have. Even when you look at the Revenge of the Sith, there's kind of like bits of hope in that at the end. Whereas I think with, The Empire Strikes Back, we knew that Han Solo was gone. He'd been captured by Boba Fett and taken.
Well, I think this is more like a cliffhanger.
It is,
film,
yeah, and it just worked so well. And then we had to wait 3 years for the next one.
Yeah.
But I mean, what a film! I mean, it's the first time that we properly saw Boba Fett. That Boba Fett did appear on the little known about Star Wars Christmas special, which George Lucas is trying to burn every copy, or was trying to burn every copy of it ever in existence. No, neither do I, but I would still rather watch that than The Last Jedi. With Wookiee baking, with, baking clothes on and stuff. I mean, it just kind of like looked like Bigfoot and the Hendersons, but it was Wookiees who were the humans. But that did have a cartoon with Boba Fett in it, introducing him, because he came out as a character about 2 years before The Empire Strikes Back did, because of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you actually look, 'cause the storyline had moved on as well, and you had the fantastic Battle of Hoth, and
which was very, very large in scale.
It was, and you look at those AT-AT walkers, we'd never seen anything like that on screen before, and just the sheer idea of the scale between everything as well. Again, fantastic cast that was in there, in supporting roles. But interestingly enough, it wasn't Ian McDermott's first time as the Emperor, was it? It's only in the reshoots, for the special editions, that Ian McDermott was put in. It was another actor who played Palpatine, or Darth Sidious,
yes,
or the Emperor, whichever you want to call him. He's a bit like Prince. He's had so many different names.
But it was funny how they changed. Obviously, we get to the Return of the Jedi when we get to see him, and it's quite incredible how it's progressed through the time in each of these movies. That some of these characters that we're going to see earlier on than later, because of the way these films have been filmed. I think they've done well with it.
I mean, obviously, the big spoiler for The Return of the Jedi is the "No, I am your father" line from Vader, isn't it? That's the the big one. And, you know, when I remember being a kid, and how would I have been, about 11 or 12 then? And it was sort of like, oh my God, do you know what I mean? It was sort of like so massive, listening to that.
Did you see the little, on Facebook I put on there today, Mark Hamill talking about that?
I did.
Talking about how that just creased me up on him saying that he was told that, but no one else. And, you know, and as he says, if it weren't for social media, that may well have got
I'm sure it would have done, but I'll tell you what. One of the things I always said to myself, I promised myself, was if I had a boy or a girl, doesn't matter, you know, but more if I had a boy, because I thought I'd be more interested in sci-fi, and he was interested in sci-fi, I was going to show him the Star Wars movies in chronological order rather than episodic order, for the simple reason of I wanted to see his face when he understood the line, "I am your father," and I built it up for him. And it's like, you know, I kept saying when we watched A New Hope for the first time, oh, isn't Darth Vader really bad? Isn't Luke really good? Do you think Darth Vader and Luke will fight? You know, preparing him for the next movie and that. Like, you know, because bearing in mind that this is like seeing it after successive Saturdays, as opposed to having 3 years build up between the two movies, which we had as kids. And anyway, we sat and watched the second movie, and I had him sat on my lap, and I just repositioned it so that I could see his face. And I'm not kidding you, that was worth waiting from me being a kid and experiencing that, because I experienced exactly the thrill that my dad must have done when I realised.
Well, I'd be lucky that he hadn't seen the episode of The Simpsons.
No, well,
before he got to see that.
To be honest, there was a couple of times when he'd been watching Lego Star Wars and had kept hinting at that, but not being explicit. But fortunately, the references had flowed so far over his head, it was beyond the orbit of Pluto. Do you know what I mean? He'd just not picked up on the subtlety of it, because he, you know, bearing in mind he was only like 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, do you know? I always thought The Empire Strikes Back was always longer than Star Wars: A New Hope. To me, it felt like it was a longer movie, but in fact, there's only 2 minutes difference.
Yeah, very little difference.
So I think that's why there was more going on in Empire Strikes Back. Well, I think it felt longer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Know exactly what you mean.
And, you know, at the time, I remember when I had my kids and I went to a kids' party, I took some videos and we took a load there, and I said, well, I've got Star Wars here. None of the kids was interested. And this is before, obviously, it really kicked off, because obviously we had the remakes and all the redos and all the touch-ups that came out.
And it was a film that George Lucas just couldn't leave alone. All of them were, anyway. He had to keep...
For better, for worse?
Well, I don't think that there was any need to change in the original movie, the Who Shot First, Guido or Han.
I couldn't give a 2 hoots, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Neither could I, because they both shot at the same time, is the truthful answer.
Yeah.
But I did quite like... Although the CGI wasn't quite up to speed, there was a scene that wasn't in the original movie that was, this is in A New Hope, that was where Boba Fett actually was filmed. Or he was shown in this scene anyway. I don't think he actually might have been filmed on that. But it was where they were in the hangar in Mos Eisley, and Jabba the Hutt tracks down Han, and he's like saying, Han, my boy, I can't just let, you know, anybody, any smuggler off at dumping the cargo, or where would it be, sort of thing, you know. Which, when you actually look at it in terms of the next movie, he was sending a bounty hunter after him, doesn't make sense unless you think actually the next movie's 3 or 4 years later in the story, so he's probably got a bit peed off with him. But that was a good little addition in there, I thought. Because I'd seen that with the original actor, who was a great big fat bloke dressed in furs.
He was
doing that scene.
That's right, he was. I remember seeing that on the. I think they brought all that out on the DVD, didn't they?
But in terms of, there was also, I don't know whether or not you've ever seen it, but the bits with Luke from the original. where he meets his friend's big starlighter who dies at the Battle of the Death Star.
Yeah,
because
that.
That's where he's like looking up in the sky and he can see the battle with the Tantive 4 and the Star Destroyer chasing after them. And then he meets his friend and they do that. But to be honest, that would have made it a little bit too Hollyoaks-ish, I think, as a beginning part of the actual movie. So I think it was probably wise that they cut that out, but it's quite nice to get that on the extras. But there's not that many extras on The Empire Strikes Back. I think they use most of the footage. When you actually look at I think there's something like about 13 minutes or something added extra in A New Hope, and then there's only a couple of minutes in the second, The Empire Strikes Back, because most of the changes were actually, Bespin was a load of corridors and George Lucas put windows in so that you could see outside.
Exactly. So what it would do, so the Cloud City as it was, it gave it more life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So from that point of view, and obviously when you had the Millennium Falcon coming in to land, they changed all that as well. They gave the redo touch-ups with the special effects more, they brought all that in. And even the same with Star Wars, when they're preparing to do battle, you had to all that was redone. Oh, yeah, it's fine. I mean, I've got both versions anyway.
Yeah, so have I.
I think I need to go back and watch the original release version.
Yeah.
See how bad it looks now.
I've actually got, because they did a collector's set which had the original and the special edition on DVD, and that's what I've got as well. I've got. But I recently loaned my copy of the original 3 movies to someone I work with, because he'd never seen them, and bearing in mind it's a 30-something-year-old bloke, he's kind of thinking, what have you been doing with your life, pal? But he hasn't.
It's funny because obviously with digital technology, and we've got now 4K and everything else, people that have been crying out for those original versions back out.
Yeah, in 4K.
But they're not just. No, but what I mean is just the original print.
Yeah.
Without the redos, so you got the original theatrical version that came out back in 1977.
I have to admit, I'm not that bothered about having the actual original theatrical print, because that I've seen over 500 times, and I kind of know it to death. Well, I know all of the films to death, but I just, I actually quite liked what Lucas was doing in improving the movies. I know that some people didn't think that he was. But I think he made it more coherent in terms of the universe. And, I just think it was really good. I'm quite surprised one thing he didn't do, which was touch up Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back to do more digital enhancements on him. But, Yoda, what a fantastic character he was.
I think the idea of it being a puppet, which Frank Oz was dealing with from the Muppet days, I think it holds a bit of, I don't know, it's got something still, is it like that?
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but the Last Jedi Yoda, I thought it looked terrible. It neither looked real nor CGI, and it just, I don't know, it looked so out of place. It looked like a toy. Do you know what I mean? It didn't, whereas, alright, that in The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda's a puppet, but it's a puppet with so much life to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It so much life, it feels like a person rather than, a piece of cloth.
Well, yeah, because you don't think of it as much as when you see Luke coming back as he's promised in Return of the Jedi, for example, and that was still a puppet.
One thing I've always troubled me about the original Empire Strikes Back, the Empire Strikes Back generally, is Yoda's line of, when he's talking about the Force, and this is, banging Luke on the arm and saying it's not about your muscles, it's about the Force around you. So why is all of Luke's training physical? Because if you think about it, he's having him running around doing, loopy jumps, carrying him on his back, start doing a one-handed handstand. What's all that about if it's all about your mental power controlling the Force? It doesn't quite. I know that he had to fill it up with doing something, and probably sitting, having him there looking like a Zen Buddhist monk with his legs crossed and floating in the air would have looked a bit weird, and probably people wouldn't have understood it. But it's interesting because one of the other things as well, because I love reading all of the stuff online about people with different theories about Star Wars. I mean, I've done my own ones on YouTube, but he's, one of the theories is about people saying, well, how could Luke become a Jedi in in the space of 2 hours, sort of thing? But what you've got to remember in terms of that Star Wars is it was 3 years from A New Hope. So maybe Luke's been getting himself trained up using Jedi holocrons, which was supposed to be like the archives of the Jedi. And there's people who are doing theories about, well, if you're near a gravitational well, time moves slower. So maybe he was near an extreme gravitational well, which really moved down time slowly. So that, and then other ones who were saying, well, if the Falcon was flying at Bespin at sub-light speed and it's here, it would have taken him 6 months, and someone had calculated it.
Yeah, well, those people need to get to life.
I know they do, but I love listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to geek out, but sometimes you need to rein it back a bit. Some people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just a thing of, it is what it is. Just accept it. In that sort of respect. Yeah. But there is years in that storyline. It's not, not a Mary Sue couple of hours or a couple of days sort of distance in travel. But Empire Strikes Back, definitely the best out of all the movies for me. I think it had the best environments. I think it had the best script. That bit where, Han's getting lowered into the carbonite freezing, and, later Ezra says, "I love you," and he goes, "I know." I mean, that is just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know people have their some disbelief with the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
but I think we take it for what they are. I mean, the fluffy creatures, we've seen worse in some other movies later. So
let's be honest, right? Nobody actually talks about the big elephant that's in the room. That everybody's like, "Oh, aren't the Ewoks lovely? They eat people."
Yeah, because they're cannibals.
Yeah, because they were gonna cook Han.
Yeah,
but nobody ever, everyone's, aren't the Ewoks cute? Yeah, really cute, right up until they bite your head off. But nobody ever mentions that. I suppose you wouldn't for a new classified film.
So let's quick
Return of the Jedi then.
Quick question for you about it. Do you remember when they were filming? Obviously, by this time now, Star Wars is big news.
Oh,
and when they're going to film it, it's huge. And when they're out in the desert doing the scenes in the pit,
Tunisia,
and in Tunisia, and on the chairs to keep it quiet, so no one knew what it was all about. What was the film they were calling it at the time to stay? So they knew it was Star Wars. Do you remember?
Do you know, I remember that the original one was called Blue Harvest.
No, that was this one. That was Return of the Jedi.
Sure, I thought it was the original one.
No,
was called Blue Harvest.
It was Blue Harvest, because in my Starlog magazines I was buying regular by this time. That was my main diet for science fiction.
Right.
They had the Blue Harvest there on the back of the chairs.
Yeah.
And obviously Blue Harvest was used elsewhere in other fictional cartoon characters. They use that in there for parodying Star Wars later on, but
yeah.
I like the movie. Whether or not it's because I saw it at the time, I saw that one in Leicester Square, and I got a big kick out of that.
Yeah,
and the sound and everything else. It just seemed I enjoyed it, really did.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I did. I know that sometimes I rib the film, but to me, it's still part of that classic trilogy.
And there's some great classic. Now, where we have comical moments and they're done right, they work.
Oh, absolutely.
And in that movie, you got Han trying to blow up the flames when he's hanging upside down, for example. And there's other bits. Obviously, there's other bits and pieces where, if I remember rightly, there was. Let me think about it now. I can turn my head on. Do you know, it's gone completely out of my head. This is a thing when we got Star Wars and you haven't got a lot to work with. But the moments that were comical, just every time it worked. And for me, that was great, where in some other movies they don't work and they stink.
Yeah, because to be honest, it's one of those genres that you're not filming The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so don't try and make it that.
No,
I agree with you, and I do think that in terms of The Return of the Jedi, there were a few funny moments, like, for example, the Ewok hugging Han's leg and him trying to get it off.
Yeah.
You know, get the leg off, the Ewok off his leg, I mean, by the way. That was quite a funny moment, because, you know, they suddenly went from these things that were going to eat you to these, you know, little, animated teddy bears that were going to, you know, cuddle you, sort of thing. It's quite a bit of a change in a few minutes.
Exactly. But I quite liked it. And then from the great scenes at the beginning where Leia's laying there as a servant to Jabba. I mean,
let's face it. You know, the gold bikini.
It is, and
gotta put it out there.
It must have been cold. I'm going to say that now.
It must have been.
I'm sure Carrie Fisher said it many times how cold she was in that.
Well, she hated it, didn't she?
Yeah,
evidently. But she was always quite well quoted about saying about there are no bras in space, but there is gaffer tape.
Yeah, and it did hold it well, didn't it?
But, I mean, that was an example of really where George Lucas actually went way over the top in tweaking. Because if you remember, they put in that whole musical number in Jabba's palace when it was completely different in the original movie. I mean, it just felt a little bit, well, we can put this in because we can rather than because we should. But, you know, the green dancer, the Twi'lek dancer, in Jabba's palace. Did you know she was actually the original woman 20 odd years later redoing all of those dances?
Was it really? I'm trying to remember where I'd seen it. I mean, she's done some British TV before in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Yeah, it was her. She came back and reshot all of that. She'd still kept herself in shape and everything. It wasn't 20 years later, was it? It was about 16, 17 years later.
Was it as many as that long ago?
Well, it was late 90s, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, that was her doing that as well. I mean, you had the Rancor. What a monster of a thing that was.
Yeah, and those special effects were just great models at the time that they used.
Perfect example of humour used well is that bit where the Rancors just ate the Gamorrean guard.
Yeah.
And Luke's like standing there with a bone in his hand.
Puts it the wrong way round, so he's both going, ugh, ugh.
Yeah, well, no, it's the Rancor turns round, sucks up a hand into his mouth that was dangling out of his mouth, and then sort of like gives Luke a look as if, you're next. And that was a brilliant bit of humour that they just added to that. I don't know why I always think Ravenous Bug-Blatter Beast of Tral when I see that bit from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. There's some really good moments in there. The whole bit with Luke facing off against Palpatine and fighting his father, and obviously the ultimate thing of Vader becoming Anakin again.
Again, we got two sides of the coin, haven't we? So we had David Prowse being really miffed that when they were deciding to take Vader's helmet off,
they treat him really bad.
That was so. I know they could have put him in makeup. I'm sure they would have done it pretty good.
Yeah.
But the big reveal that you're going to see Darth Vader with his helmet off, and it was some other dude.
Sebastian Shaw.
Yeah.
And do you know what?
How gutting was that to me,
Yeah, and when I went to Yam the other week to see, do you know what?
Brian
Blessed. My brain's absolutely shot tonight. He was talking about that exact thing and about saying about how he'd met Sebastian Shaw, and he said, "Oh, I was in this really funny film. They made me dress all as black and put this helmet on me, and I had to lay there and they took the helmet off and I had to say, 'Luke, tell your sister you were right.'" And he went absolutely ballistic. He said, "My God, you're you're Darth Vader, sort of thing, you know. And evidently he was so opposite to what, you know, Darth Vader would have been ever like. You know, it's like evidently a very gentle sort of man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I think it was a shame that they did that. And on the I Am Your Father documentary, there was I don't think it was Spanish or Mexican or something, director who got in contact with David Prowse and actually reshot that part of the movie with David Prowse being unveiled. But you never actually got to see that. But that was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there, but well worth a watch, because it talks about David Prowse and about how, you know, about his experience working with Star Wars, because obviously he had a very sour relationship with George Lucas, and by all accounts from what was uncovered in that documentary, you can kind of understand why in some ways George maybe was a bit miffed with David, but he was blamed for something that he didn't actually do. And you know, I think it's a shame, because he's played the most iconic villain of all time. He was one half of it, with James Earl Jones being the other half of the voice.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the top villains up there. With probably a few more we could talk about, but that's not what we're here for Zoo. But rightly so. But yeah, continuity mistakes. There's a classic in Return of the Jedi on the Speedo chase. Yeah, where Han's robot hand is moving from left to right.
Do you mean Luke's?
In the cut? Yeah, Luke's. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's all right. So. That again is still there in the redo as well. They didn't take that one out. So we had a break, and once that film was done, we all thought it was over.
Yeah, and then along came the prequels 2 decades nearly later.
Well, we had the redos first with the 90s.
Well, actually, we did have 2 more Star Wars movies in that time.
Go on.
The Ewok movies.
God, well, we don't talk about those, do we?
No, we don't. Nobody talks about those.
No, they just happened and
the Caravan of Courage, and I can't remember what the other one was.
They failed anyway, so that was more than anything.
I have to admit, though, I do have them on DVD.
You sad little man. But yeah, so we had the redos in the 90s, and it was great to go back to the cinema to see the films. Well,
with the special releases, because they did it the right way around, because they did the special editions right before they released The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and I can't remember at the time, but they were pretty close together when they released them, didn't they? Was it like a couple of weeks each time?
A couple of months,
Was it a couple of months?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great to go back to the cinema. See, this is what we miss now from Star Wars. It's that when a Star Wars film came out, it was an event, and it isn't anymore.
No, they're too frequent.
It's sad, really, that we don't have that anymore, you know, but they were great to see them out, and then hearing that they're going to be bringing out 1, 2, and 3. And we'll hear about after Alec Guinness talking, you know, in the first film about the Clone Wars. Think, we're going to see all this, you know.
Yeah, and we did get to see it as well. That was the good thing.
And it was great. And I think people decided to say that The Phantom Menace was for kids.
I think that there was only one reason why people said it was for kids.
Is that because are we going to mention his name?
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks. Let's face it, that character pretty much single-handedly ruined the movie. Because when you actually look at it, it's not bad apart from Jar Jar. Jar Jar is a sort of required character, but didn't have to be anywhere near as stupid as he was. And it was very clear that character was aimed at children. Absolutely aimed at children. Which is not a bad thing, but it ruined the movie. And the other thing as well is it was actually quite racially prejudiced as a character as well, because you know it had that sort of like Jamaican accent, and it put it in a bad light.
I mean, actor wise, we had Liam Neeson,
brilliant as Qui-Gon
absolutely. Jinn. And again, I suppose the idea of way it works, that we see these kids growing up through the 3 films.
Yeah.
But obviously, by the 3rd film, I don't think it wasn't exactly, there wasn't Hayden Christensen, was it? I don't think so, was it?
The 2nd and 3rd film, it was Hayden Christensen, yeah.
But it was just nice to see that them growing up and becoming who they become and how they did it. I think that was quite good.
Yeah, and I liked, evidently Jake Lloyd, who played Star Wars, he evidently regrets doing it now. I mean, how he could regret that, I don't know, but to me, the prequels were a really good evidence of what can be done computer-wise, because there was very few sets that were actually built, and most shots had CGI in them in one way or another. But, that was George Lucas's thing.
Well, the way that technology moved from Star Wars with THX sound, with Lucasfilm and everything else that came out of that.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. But, acting in a film like Star Wars where you're on a load of green boxes, imagine you're being sliced and diced and have to run and roll and jump.
Yeah.
That's not acting. Well, I suppose it is, but it isn't in another way, if you know what I mean.
To be honest, in a lot of ways, because this film has one of my favourite Star Wars theme tunes, which is The Duel of Fates.
Yeah.
Brilliant piece of music. And, there are to me, there are aspects of this movie that are just absolutely brilliant. Like the fight between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul. That is a great fight, and it's so action-packed right the way through it. I think it's a crying shame that Darth Maul's only lines were, "Yes, my master," and, "At last we will be able to reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge." And that was all he got to say. And that was actually someone completely different. It wasn't the actor doing it who, Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, he's got a funny name. He's a British comedian. He also plays the Tick on Amazon Prime at the moment. I've forgotten what his name is.
Okay.
But he did Darth Maul's voice, evidently. So, but not the actor who played him. The actor who played him was Toad on X-Men, the original X-Men movie. Ray Parks was who played him. Yeah,
he did, yeah.
The body of him. So, it must be something about being a Sith Lord that you actually have to have somebody else do your voice.
If it's, out of all these three films, what really came out really great about this for me was Ian McDiarmid and his role.
Oh God, yeah, Ian McDiarmid. I mean, he played such a good character.
Because at first, obviously, you don't really twig it who he's going to be for a bit, do you? I think in the first film, you see this guy, you don't really know too much about him.
Yeah.
And it's all diplomatic and it's all the governments. And it's not until the second film
that you start to get an inkling. I have to admit, to be honest, I kind of knew long before.
I'm sure you did.
So for me, it wasn't a reveal.
But not more the reveal, but it was just kept quiet and he did his bit, and he was in the end of the movie. He was there with everyone else. Yeah, great, But then comes...
Sorry, go on.
And come the second film, where we start to see his character and how it would change and how he would talk when it comes to the third film, which I think, to be honest, the third one's best of the three.
Yeah, I think that they progressively got better. I think that one of the main challenges for The Phantom Menace was that there was 2 decades of people who had grown up with Star Wars, had been deprived of anything new. This came along and we all had unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think that was the case. And I think where George Lucas probably made the mistake is George Lucas should have said Star Wars is no longer for kids, it's for the generation of people who grew up with it, and made an adult Star Wars film with the prequels. It could have been a lot more darker and a lot more gritty and not have silly characters in like Jar Jar. And to be honest, the whole plot of the Jedi Master getting Princess Amidala to Coruscant by a kid winning a illegal race and a pod race, who'd never finished a race, let alone won one, was a bit dodgy. And the other bad thing as well was the whole midi-chlorians.
Yeah,
okay. About measuring how many midi-chlorians you've got in your body because that tells you how force sensitive it is. Because it then took the myth of the force and made it into a science. And I think that was just a mistake. It should have just been some people have it and some people don't. I think that there were aspects of this film that worked really well, and there were other aspects that were terrible.
I mean, I'd love Christopher Lee in Attack of the Clones.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Christopher Lee, he's good in anything that he does, but, he does that Darth Tyrannus. character justice, I think.
And then obviously Samuel Jackson as Mace Windu as well. He was great.
Yes, with his purple lightsaber, because Mace Windu uses the light and the dark side of the Force. So blue and red equals purple.
Yeah. So with there were some great actors that were in this. Well, I think.
But this is where people were clamouring to get at Star Wars, because it's just so iconic.
Yeah, it was. I think one character in the background that I liked that was not given his praise was Senator Bail Organa, who took in Leia. Yes,
yeah, he did a good part, and obviously came into the next one as well. And he was also in Rogue One.
That's what made it for me, actually, seeing him.
Yeah. Because we'd always heard it. We grew up listening about Bail Organa. And I mean, I used to read the books as well. I was an avid reader of the Star Wars books and all of the stuff that's kind of like being decanonised now. But they bring back in different ways. Like Kylo Ren was Jason Solo in the Star Wars Legends sort of side. Because Jason Solo became evil, like his grandfather. Whereas Ben Solo, it's the same character. They just renamed it and nicked the ID, but they didn't have any of Han and Leia's other kids apart from Rey. Whoops, sorry, did I say that?
Oh, you're geeking out too much now.
I am, because she is Han and Leia's daughter, I reckon. Still.
Anyway,
carry on.
So from this we went on to Revenge of the Sith, which I love that film. And as much as I think Hayden Christensen gets a bit wooden,
he had rubbish lines.
From my perspective, the Jedi are evil.
It's terrible line, is that? Come on.
Yeah, and I think also I got a funny feeling for me. I don't know what it was with the third film, but Natalie Portman, is it me or the makeup and how she looked come the end of the film? She looked dreadful in that.
Oh, there was that bit on Coruscant when Anakin goes to see her, or the talking, and you look at her and you go, "Oh my god!"
She looked like she had a bad night as a bender and a few beers.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, it didn't.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's noticed that.
No, it was bad. It was. But bad.
It was. I mean, I love the scenes when we first seen the Sith Lord. He's coming, and he's got Hayden there's decided to go down the dark route.
Yeah,
and you're seeing him bowing down there, and he's giving him his name Darth Vader and that.
You see. I mean, I just love the build-up with Ian McDiarmid and how they just changed that, and when Anakin went to see Palpatine, when he was at the, the floaty water opera. Yeah. And then that music plays, it says, "Have you ever heard about the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?"
Yeah.
And Darth Plagueis the Wise, of course, was Palpatine's
Well, he was reading him in there, wasn't he? He was literally baiting him because he knows he's having a tough time with his.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the Star Wars Legends stuff is saying that actually the dreams that Anakin Skywalker was having about his mother dying, and also about Amidala, Padme dying, were actually caused by Palpatine. Anyway, as one of his Force powers sort of thing, as part of the build up there. But, Ian McDiarmid's great, when there is the big reveal, like, so we've come to collect you, and then Ian McDiarmid just suddenly turns all Darth Sidious and then, kills three Jedi in a couple of minutes.
His voice changes and it's just like another person, isn't he?
So it's treason then. That was brilliant.
And then poor old Samuel Jackson goes through the window, and that's it. That's the last we see of him.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame, because I would like to have seen him survive and go on through the films a bit more.
To be honest, I can't see why they can bring that character back, because technically we didn't actually see him die. What we saw was him being flung out of a window hundreds of stories up. But let's face it, we know of two Jedi who have lived through multi-story falls like that. Straight off. So why can't he? Because he could have used his force powers to repel him from the ground before he had a bad landing. You know,
he could have done it. He could have done a Batman and had a little something thrown out. He could have just winged on it and swung down and sort of thing. You know,
exactly. But Samuel L. Jackson, I mean, he's always brilliant in absolutely everything that he did. But interestingly enough, just talking about that bit about the Darth Plagueis the Wise, one of the very many Star Wars fan theories that's out there is that Snoke in obviously the new movies was Darth Plagueis the Wise, because he was supposed to Snoke was supposed to have seen the rise or the end of a republic and the rise of the Empire, and according to the canon and the legends, Darth Plagueis was alive when Palpatine became Chancellor, and then when he became Chancellor, Palpatine supposedly killed him. But Darth Plagueis the Wise's power, main force power, was about extending life, and there's theories about was that transference of his force being into others or into a clone or stuff like that, because Palpatine or Darth Sidious comes back in the comic books, The Dark Empire, because the Empire grows a clone has a cloning facility of Sidious, and he transfers his essence into the clone, but because it's a clone and it's not a proper body, it burns out quickly, so he has to keep cloning himself. So that's the comics side, so that it's already been established in the Star Wars universe. All right, granted, some of it being decanonized, that sort of stuff can happen. So, but I was really hoping that we would have seen him being Darth Plagueis, but who knows what's going to happen with it now. Other theory was that it was Gallius Rax, who was First Order General from the Chuck Wellins Aftermath novels as well. Okay. Or Ezra Bridges from Rebels, because Star Wars Rebels was another. But great, and that the fight scene with Yoda as well, with Palpatine, that was good.
Yeah, no, it's just that we're seeing a digital version now.
Yeah.
But it worked well. I think it was really good.
But so was the fight with Darth Tyrannus, Christopher Lee's one as well with Yoda.
Count Dooku, yeah, it was, yeah. Oh, they all work well. It's funny because when we get into near the climax of the film, and you're starting to see, you know what's going to happen, but you're going to see him turn on all those kids and everything else. Yeah, and
I love that iconography of Anakin walking across that bridge with all of those there weren't stormtroopers then, but the clone troopers walking behind him with his hood up and stuff like that. I thought that was great sort of imagery of the film. Do you know what I mean?
And seeing his trainer being devastated at what he's witnessing.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi cannot believe what he's looking at.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then we had the climax with the fight in the volcanoes.
Yeah, that was a terrible Obi-Wan line. It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground.
Yeah. Well, there's one worse than that as we get near the end of that film anyway. There's one more moment that's just dreadful.
Oh, the no.
Yes, the no.
Yeah, it was too robotic, but I think what they should have done in that, because there is supposedly a force power of it, like a massive burst out. What happened was that they did that prolonged no where everything got crushed. I think it would have been better to have had an explosion of the force, and it blew everything outwards rather than him crushing everything with the force. I just see that didn't work, but I think, because when you think about it, if you lose your temper and you shout no, that's something that goes outwards. It's not something that goes inwards. So the crushing didn't feel right. And I think that was what was remarkable with that. I think if you'd have done that as an explosion out of the force that would have ripped open a wall and, flattened everything in the room, and even, just got, where he flings his arms up and goes, no, and bang, that would have worked. But because they did it the other way around, it didn't work.
No, it was a bit of an anticlimax, that piece.
Yeah, but then it had the lovely bit afterwards where
Governor Tarkin.
Governor Tarkin, when he's standing there, with Sidious and Vader, but also when Luke is dropped off at Tatooine by Obi-Wan and Bail Organa takes Leia home.
Yeah.
So there were some really good...
They were sort of touching moments, weren't they?
Yeah, there were. And it gave that completeness to that as a cycle, which is then even more filled in by Rogue One. But obviously before that, we had The Force Awakens.
So I think the hype for that film was huge.
Oh, God, yes. Yes.
More so, I think...
Because don't forget, then... what you had was two sets of generations of people at different ages in their lives who were all looking at this movie. Yeah. Every one of them. Because you had all of the kids, you know, who were brought up in the 90s where their first real Star Wars was the prequels. And then you had us lot, us old buggers, who the prequels were rubbish, we want something good now. Yeah. And so they had to appease both sets. And to be honest, I think that they got the complete right director. You know, J.J. Abrams is, you know, he does pleasing stuff. I think it was a really... I don't care if it was a carbon copy of A New Hope in a lot of ways. It was a good movie. It was enjoyable. You know, I liked the film. I think the reason it worked well is because when they were obviously going to start thinking about making this movie, you got to bring back the old characters. I don't think that they did have to, you know. I think that we wanted them to, but I don't think that they had to. They could have said 100 years from now. And then that would have took them out of the equation entirely. A bit like, you know, Star Trek to The Next Generation. Do you know what I mean? Do that 80 to 100 years jump. It's too long for those characters to still be alive. Well, apart from Chewie and R2 and C-3PO. Yeah. So from that sort of perspective, I think that they had to. I hated the fact that they killed Han. That.
Obviously you did, and obviously he was your boy hero.
I went 6 months of mourning for that.
Yeah. But I didn't like the idea that Mark Hamill really
wasn't because he was built up as being in it, and he was in about 30 seconds of it.
That must have been a good paycheck for him.
What do you have to do? You have to stand at the top of a hill in Ireland. You can have had plenty to drink, and you've got to have that look on your face of, oh my God, my daughter's found me drinking in Ireland. Because if you look, that was the exact face he had.
We don't know it's his daughter. We don't know it's his daughter. Come on, you are assuming again. And we're not going to go into whys and whats, but no.
We'll get on that when we talk about The Last Jedi.
Oh, if we must.
Only for a minute.
So I think great seeing Harrison Ford back.
Oh, brilliant,
because he's such a great actor. And at first, seeing Daisy Ridley and John Boyega as complete nobodies, really doing well. And they you know, I thought, well, this is going somewhere.
Yeah. I have to admit, though, even back on The Force Awakens, Daisy Ridley was a bit of a Mary Sue. But the way that I'd kind of explained it in my own head is if she was a Skywalker, because let's face it, the Star Wars stories are about the Skywalkers. It's the Skywalker saga, yeah?
Yeah.
So therefore, I know that there is Ben Solo or Kylo Ren, and he's a Skywalker link across all the new three. But I don't think him on his own is a strong enough link. And I think, being honest, I know that it's a bit of a easy cop-out, but Rey has to be either Luke's daughter or Han and Leia's daughter. And either way, then she would have been exposed to Jedi training at a very young age, at an age where she might have forgotten who her parents were if she was dumped on Jakku.
Well, maybe that'd be revealed in the last.
Well, don't forget, trilogy. The Last Jedi said that, you know, established that Rey's parents were junkers who sold her, which is complete rubbish because it was, to me, when I watched that film, I even thought at the time when I watched the film, that is just a plot point to devalue Rey by Kylo Ren. You know, he's playing on her fears that she's actually nobody, but then the stupid bit with the broom at the very end of the movie where that kid just summons the broom to his hand. You know, that bit of that movie needs cutting out. Well, along with another 100 and something minutes of it.
Anyway, we haven't got that far yet. You've jumped the gun again. Now, with this film, there's a couple of bits I weren't too keen on.
Okay, which ones?
Adam Driver and his hair. For me, I don't know, having that mask gone that far, and he comes off like a shampoo commercial, swings his hair in the air, and it all just blings into place. Yeah. Come on. I don't think that would be the case.
Give me that lightsaber because I'm worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And the other bit is really a pointless character is Captain Phasma.
God, yes. But let's face it, let's be honest, with the last two movies, there is a reason why Captain Phasma was created, and only one reason. To make the trailers look cool.
But it's just, I'm glad
she won't be dead. She'll be back. I bet you anything she'll be back.
But, the idea, I know, I'm not going to go into the whys and whats of feminism and everything else, but she was just a waste of just, what was the point? It just doesn't, all right, she was there as the leader of a load of stormtroopers, and one of those decides to go rogue.
But not only that. I mean, I did a Star Wars theory on Captain Phasma, which I think fits her character much more than a lot of the established stuff. I think she's actually an agent for the Resistance, because she gets FN 2187 and says, what you doing? You've got your helmet off. Who said that you could do that? Report to my section. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean? He doesn't go, but then she lies to General Hux and says, he reported to my section for conditioning. And then she gives up really, really easy to shut down the force shields surrounding, the super weapon. So to me, either she's actually spineless and is just there to prance about and look cool for photo opportunities for the First Order, or she has to be an agent of the Resistance, because otherwise her motivations don't match. If she was in charge, of that super weapon, in terms of the security of it, if somebody sticks a gun in her face, she's not going to go, yeah, of course, I'll switch the shield off for you, no problem. Is she? It doesn't work as a plot point.
So we were left hanging on a whim with who was Snoke and all this sort of stuff. Snoke. And then came Rogue One in between.
And what a fantastic explosion of a film.
For me, is one of the best Star Wars films made.
Yes, I would say it's the second best Star Wars film ever made.
Just behind Empire Strikes Back, I presume, yeah? And
this was a film I had very little faith in.
Be patient, this is going to... And
patience!
and there's some great characters in that. And Donnie Yen, for me, was hands out one of the...
Oh, yeah. Chitibwe.
A blind Jedi.
No, he wasn't a Jedi. He was a guardian of the wills.
He thought he was.
He was a guardian of the wills.
Yeah, but I think he still thought he was a Jedi, the way he was running around.
Well, he used the Force, but it's been established in the Star Wars universe that there is more than the Sith and the Jedi who use the Force, and there's also the Bendu and all sorts of other people as well. But
overall, it was a great fill-in to tease our brains into what actually happened.
For me, it was all of the little nods to everything that went out in that film, because if you're an absolute Star Wars nerd, as probably people will realise I am now, there was so much in that. It's like the chance happening of some bloke with a really mashed up face and a walrus guy, when they're walking through the city, but that was the same people who were also on A New Hope, where it says, we have the, deathly on 12 systems. I'll be careful. You'll be dead. That one. That was the same characters, Ponda Barber and Dr. Whatever his name is, can't remember. Brain's gone again. So, and that's, it was little things like that were going on all of the time. And also, it was the first time when there was a crossover, or it was one of the first times when there was a crossover from the animated series to the actual movies. So, on the Clone Wars, because we haven't mentioned about the fact that there was a TV series of Clone Wars.
Yeah, as well. I sort of, that passed me by as much for some reason. I just weren't up. Just didn't buy it, to be honest, but yeah, I'm sure you enjoyed it.
Yeah, but it was Saw Gerrera, who was played by Forrest Whitaker. His character was one of the ones on the Clone Wars back in the day.
Yeah.
So, but there were so many great characters.
How about you got, there's one little Easter egg, was Red Leader.
Yes.
How cool
Yeah,
is
because
that?
he got killed. And all the Blue Squadron died on the planet.
Yeah. And does it seem funny? I mean, I went to see this at Pinewood Studios and I had the time of my life seeing it there. That was just the cherry on top for me.
Mm.
But watching a film that you know the ending.
Yeah. Well, who was it? I wound somebody else up about this, just having a bit of a joke, because I said, we were on about Rogue One, and I said, yeah, have you heard? So what's that? I said, evidently George Lucas has been signed up to do the sequel. When's he doing that? 1977.
Yeah.
But that was quite a good joke. But, on the film, you notice that every planet is named apart from one.
I wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, every planet is named. One of the planets that they go on is a derivative of Obi-Wan. But the planet that's not named is where Darth Vader's castle is.
Oh, okay.
And that is Mustafar. And Mustafar was the planet where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fought.
Yes.
And the location of Darth Vader's castle is over the area where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fought, because Palpatine built it there and then stuck Darth Vader's whatever it is chamber with a window out looking out over that area so that he can reflect on his great failure, because that is then supposed to empower him more in the dark side of the Force because of anger. So there you go. Bet you didn't know that.
So, yeah, but Mustafar, I did know where that was.
Yeah.
And everything else, because it was, obviously it was in the Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
It was mentioned anyway, obviously, but
Tarkin on this. Wow.
Yeah, and what about Leia though? How did you find that?
I found it absolutely fine. To be honest, I would not have a problem with having a CGI Leia on episode 9. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. I know that some people said, oh, it's disrespectful. I don't think it is. I think it's actually the complete polar opposite.
What about Governor Tarkin and Peter Cushing asking his family, can we use a CGI version in the film? And they said, yeah, fine.
Yeah. And to me, what that says is that character is so incredibly iconic, it cannot be played by anybody else. And that's what speaks to me.
There's talk of Meryl Streep playing.
Yeah, because she was good friends with it, and evidently Mark Hamill's not a big fan of that idea.
Mark these days is
extreme.
He says his penny's worth, and he says how it is now. I think he's had enough of Star Wars.
I think, to be quite honest, I think he'd had enough of Star Wars before, because he used to be very, very negative on Star Wars. Then he got another contract, and then he was all for Star Wars. Yeah. And now they've killed off his character, and now he's not on Star Wars.
Well, just off topic. You don't watch Big Bang, do you? Really? Okay.
Very
it's
little.
The last episode of the season Thursday.
Yeah.
And Sheldon's getting married.
And
Mark Hamill is going to be the judge and overseer of the whole thing.
I might have to watch that then.
And I've already seen some clips of it, but he's actually going to do the wedding.
Yeah.
And there's an outtake scene. I think it was a bit to do with Stephen Hawking, and to really touch him. I think if you look at what I've posted on Facebook, you'll probably see it. And Sheldon goes and says to Amy, says, "Look, I've got Mark Hamill's autograph." Classic, absolutely classic. But yeah, you've got to watch that on Thursday night.
I will do, definitely.
So should we go to...
Can I just say one thing that this film did do?
Yeah.
It did change Star Wars forever. Well, actually, I want to say two things. First off, that fight scene with Vader in it,
it was
really
great,
good.
But it made, if you decided to cut those two films together, so if you put New Hope and just bolt it on the end of it, it wouldn't make sense, because he's such a badass in there.
Yeah, and then he's like but then again, Carrie Fisher says, Governor Tarkin, I thought I would have found somebody holding Vader's leash. So don't forget, maybe he was doing it because he was under orders under Tarkin, which is a bit strange if he was Palpatine's second in command. But there you go. But how this changed Star Wars forever, and it is exactly the point of what you've said, as if you run one again straight after the other, is it kind of makes Leia look very bad at lying and as guilty as a puppy sitting next to a pile of poo. Because where she turns around, she says, "We're on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan." No, you weren't.
Total bollocks, excuse me.
Complete bollocks. I nearly boarded your ship and you buggered off before I could get on.
Yeah, that's it. But there is, I think, if you go find it, there is a YouTube. Someone actually bolted them together, that piece, so you can see what it's like.
Yeah, I find it really. While I absolutely love, and I think they've done a great thing of putting it into the universe, it does change that scene. It does change that scene completely. Okay,
so my pizza's getting cold, by the way. So
all right, well, we'll do the last one then.
Should we do the last one? So I really haven't got a lot to say about this film, other than it stinks, so I haven't.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't got very much good to say about this
The
film.
action sequences are pretty good. They're pretty standard Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I would say that visuals, the film is the best one out of all of them. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Visually, it looks fantastic.
I don't actually own this on Blu-ray yet, or 4K, or whatever version you have. And I'm debating whether I'll ever own it, to be honest.
To be honest, the only reason why I have it is just to fill out the collection.
You're just doing your OCD bit, aren't you?
I am, yeah, because I can't leave a whole movie out of the collection.
Yeah. But you'll end up buying when Disney release a 4K super duper box set.
Yeah, probably, but it'll be because I'll be buying it as a box set then. But
yeah,
shall I go through what I think was wrong?
Yeah,
with this
I'll
film?
just put my penny's worth in because I really, honestly, I don't want to waste my breath with it.
All right,
I really don't. It's there's a few plot holes as well, but
a few.
Yeah,
there's more holes than
and some
plot.
Characters you think are going to be great in this and going to be really interesting to hear about, but just a waste of time and don't materialise into anything. To be honest,
my issues with this is overuse of
and
humour.
you know what? You know when you said to me, you've got to watch it, and I sat there, and you're there on that little place in Ireland, but it isn't Ireland, but it is for us now, okay?
Yeah.
And she passed him his lightsaber, and he tossed it away like it was nothing. If that was a joke, that wasn't funny. It didn't work. No. I think the scene was wrong. Wrong.
I think, to be quite honest, the whole thing screamed of Rian Johnson, and I know I keep banging on about him, but Rian Johnson didn't get and didn't understand Star Wars. And I think he also certainly really didn't get the fan following for this. And those people who do hold it near and dear, it was a smack in the face. And do you know what? I actually take exception to the fact of them turning around and saying, this is Lucas Arts, turning around and saying negative things about people who dare criticise the movie. We dare criticise the movie because we know it just as well as you do. You might make up the new bits, but when they're inconsistent, we're the ones who audit it. And we audit it with our money.
Yeah, I'm sure people like Mark Hamill did have their pennies worth to say, but they weren't probably allowed to.
He evidently did, and said that his character would never go back. I'll talk about that in a sec. So it's not a slapstick film, or it shouldn't be, and they tried to make it that. Captain Phasma being the most pointless character ever.
Well, there's obviously another
Star Wars.
Well, there's another one in this as well, but yeah.
Yeah. Rose, the big new character who's female. Ooh. She was an awful character. She was just there to make, as a plot device, to make the whole Finn abandoning the Resistance story in any way, shape or form credible, and it wouldn't have been credible because
then she pops her clogs.
No, she didn't pop her clogs because
did she?
No.
Okay.
No, she was seriously wounded, but I bet she'll be back. But, that whole thing about, Finn abandoning the Resistance, he wouldn't have done, because for a start off, when he was straight away saying, where's rape, poor, and all this, that and the other. So there was that. All that had been addressed in The Force Awakens. He was with the Resistance, so that was stupid. Del Toro's character, who was so overhyped, and I think that he played it terrible. I think his character was terrible. And the whole entire subplot of getting the hacker was a complete waste of time, because they'd developed the storyline of putting a tension in between.
Well, you see, what was the point of that in the first place?
There wasn't.
Leia, because Leia would have been by her side, his side, should I say? And as much as she would put him down and tell him where he should be, what he should be saying, what he should be doing, but I just thought, just wound me up.
it didn't work as a plot point, because why would you keep the person who is in charge of your ships in the dark when no one's going to be going anywhere at the end of the day? It was completely and utterly stupid. The whole Vice Admiral Holdo storyline was the only purpose for that to be there was so that Rose and Finn had something to do, because and also Poe had something to do, because otherwise they had nothing to do in the film.
And therefore the script was completely wrong anyway for those characters. There was no meat and potatoes for them to grab hold of, is there?
No, exactly. But next problem was Yoda. The CGI was terrible. It neither looked real nor looked artificial. It just looked stupid. And also, his character seems to have gone mental, setting that tree on fire and stuff like that. It just didn't feel right. Rey's a complete Mary Sue. Somehow she's managed to be able to do everything with the Force with literally 2 days of stories worth of training, which is stupid. And then one of the most unforgivable things was about Snoke.
We see that was a big thing. It was, you heard about his character in the last film.
Yeah. And I think he was built up for a purpose, which I think that the director chose not to go with Abrams' vision. I think that whatever he'd wrote about this is what's going to happen in episode 2, Rian Johnson had picked that up and gone, oh, very interesting, threw it over his shoulder like Luke did with the lightsaber. I think, in a matter of fact, that was a metaphor for what he did with Abrams' plans for the next movie, to be honest.
Obviously, before all this happened, I know your list is probably a bit out of sync here, but for me, Leia as far as I'm concerned, turning into Superwoman to fly back.
It wasn't Superwoman, it was Mary Poppins.
No, for me, it was like she was playing Superwoman for me, as if it was just the scene was wrong, it didn't work, it's just dreadful.
Yeah, terrible. I completely agree. Whether or not you want to call her Superwoman or you want to call her Mary Poppins, I think it's a 50-50 split on the internet what people call it.
But they're all calling it bad.
Yeah, that was bad. That was absolutely really bad. I think Kylo Ren was a mess of a character.
His hair getting in the way all the time.
Well, to be honest, there was this whole bit where I think that they tried to put a bit of sexual tension between him and Rey, and it didn't work because, to be honest, he ain't good looking enough or have the physique enough to carry off creating sexual tension, especially not with a person who's as good looking as Rey. Do you know what I mean? It didn't work again, and plus the fact it's probably his sister. And I think everything that happened with Luke, it was completely not his character at all. This is the character who met somebody who he didn't know who his father was. When he met him and he found out in the moments after he got his hand chopped off, he realised, actually, there's good in him and I'm going to convert him from the dark side. Yeah, so he's literally, the only time he's ever met his father is when he's tried to kill his father, yeah, and recognises that he's good, to then go 20 years later to seeing his nephew asleep and having a vision or whatever it was he was supposed to have had, and then going, oh, do you know what? I think he's going to be evil and there's no good in him at all, despite the fact that Snoke has already said that he's in conflict. And then turn around and say, the only choice I've got is to kill him. It doesn't work. It's not what the character would have done, because Luke would have tried to rescue the good out of there.
But the thing, the way he finishes his story in this film, I just didn't like it. And the idea of him transporting his body in a vision, just didn't work.
No, it didn't. And I'll tell you something else that didn't work as well. You know the Super Star Destroyer with the tracking device.
Oh, you mean the one out of Destiny, the Dreadnought?
Yeah, but all of this story about they found a way to track a ship through through hyperspace. By the way, reference Rogue One, because that was mentioned in that as well. In when they were on the looking for the plans, but in terms of that, it didn't work because they established that it was impossible unless you had this. But Rey and Leia had magic bracelets where they could find each other wherever they were, even if they were in hyperspace.
Yeah.
So it was full of plot holes. It wasn't coherent. The visuals were good, but there was no substance to it, and it was completely and utterly not in character or keeping with the other movies.
There's no way that was a Star Wars film. To be honest,
to be honest, it was a Star Wars branded film that was wrote by somebody I think who'd been told what Jedi were, but had never actually watched the movie.
Bring back the fluffy teddy bears. Come on, they'd have done better.
To be quite honest, I would have rather have watched A Caravan of Courage than I would have done The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
and that's saying something.
You see, as much as looking to the future, we got Solo coming out end of the month.
I'm
sure that I'm hoping to get to see that at cinema. I mean, that looks like it would be a good film. Again, these may be that we're going to see some better standalone films than we are truly to do with the.
Maybe so, maybe. But I mean, Solo's evidently sounding quite promising, so that's good. You know, evidently it's getting good critical reviews, so I'm looking forward to that. We've got Abrams back in a driving seat for episode 9, so he can undo a lot of damage.
Yeah, hopefully turn the clock back.
And I've heard rumours, I don't know whether or not it's right or not, but evidently Jerry Ryan isn't getting a trilogy. Woohoo! So... Sorry, not Jerry Ryan, Ryan Johnson. Get the name right.
Thank you. You're on about start. I thought, okay.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson, sorry. He's not getting the next Star Wars trilogy, which is, I think, good news. But I think what they want to do with the Star Wars trilogy is go back to the Knights of the Old Republic day and do a movie about that.
I would like to see Liam Neeson back, you know?
Yeah, but it'd be difficult for him to play a young Qui-Gon Jinn.
It would do, wouldn't it? Just, I'd like to have seen... Obi-Wan going back to seeing him, as at the end of, do you know what I mean? The end of that film.
Well, there's supposed to be an Obi-Wan movie that might be on its way, and a Boba Fett.
Yeah, well, I think Obi-Wan would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Would you like to see Ewan McGregor play it?
Evidently, he's already been sounded out, so
I think that would work.
Read. I do, because he's progressed in enough years to be like in that midpoint between his... Alec Guinness's version of his character and his character.
Because it'd be great to see the shadowing with Luke in the background.
Yeah, maybe the first time, when he's talking about old Ben, and about how they met and what happened to them. So I think that would be good. That would work as a story. But obviously it can't be something too big, because otherwise they would have known that he was there.
No, that's it, yeah. But it's a shame that for me now, as I say, Star Wars isn't Star Wars anymore. It's lost I've lost my love with it.
I think the thing is, it's not for us anymore. It's not aimed at us.
No.
Not that it, particularly should have been, but I think that they've, in the last movie, I think they've been both ends of the spectrum. They've completely appeased the fans with The Force Awakens and completely disrespected the fans with The Last Jedi. Yeah. And I think that...
Do you think there should be a longer gap between these films?
Yeah, I think, maybe 1.5 years between each movie, but there is going to be a 1.5 year wait, isn't there, between Solo and the episode 9?
Yeah, but obviously because we've had these incidental movies thrown in the middle, it's like we've had Star Wars every 2 years, haven't we?
Every year,
yeah. More than we have with Bond, because we used to have them every other year.
Yeah.
And obviously we have to wait for that. But I'm looking forward more probably to seeing a new Star Trek movie now than my Emma Star Wars movie. There is my first love there, to be honest. But it's that anticipation which Star Wars hasn't got anymore for me.
Do you know, I have to admit, I don't know which one was my first love out of Star Wars and Star Trek. I think they both came along at exactly the same time in my life, or my exposure to them came along at exactly the same time. For you it was,
compared to me, it was.
Yeah, because that just slight difference in our age makes that difference, because, Star Trek was released so much earlier. But for me, when I started paying attention with it, I started paying attention to both at the same time.
Yeah.
And they both... they both fill different itches. One is a fantasy adventure, and the other one is a utopian future. So,
but yeah, Star Wars is what it is. I think I'm sure people out there have got their own views on how they think this is, and some people like the movie, good luck to them, you know?
Yeah, if you like The Last Jedi, I'm really pleased for you, but personally I was massively disappointed. But, you know, everybody's different. You know, it wouldn't do any good if we were all the same. But doesn't mean that my view's any better than yours or vice versa.
No, not at all, no.
So, shall we leave it there then?
I think so.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Steve, for doing this slightly longer special than we actually anticipated.
Yeah.
Do you want to do your contact details?
Do you know what? I'm having to think about that for a minute. So Twitter at Steve007, PSN IDs, The Real Steve007, Xbox Steve007, and our email is Steve007 at popculturegamers.co.uk. And yourself?
Well, my YouTube channel is Hayden Reese Jones. I'm on Twitter at HERJUK. I'm on Xbox, PSN, Steam, etc. as HERJUK. Email is HERJUK at popculturegamers.co.uk. We also have our Twitter feed, which is twitter.com/popculturegamer. There's no S because they only allow a certain amount of characters for your name, and I couldn't get the S in. We have our Facebook group. We also have, if you've got any inquiries for the podcast, you can also email podcast@popculturegamers.co.uk. And there's our website, which is http://popculturegamers.podbean.com. And that's it.
It's a wrap, as they say.
It's a wrap. So, in the spirit of the show, all that we can say is, may the Force be with you.
In whichever
always.
way you feel, dark or light.
Or as sorry.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, or as it was supposed to originally have been, may the Force of others be with you. Because that was what the saying was supposed to be originally.
Anyway.
That's it. So, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night.
You are about to witness history in the making.